Awesome. So while I know many of you are familiar with our work here at Promise, I do want to take a moment to step back and introduce ourselves, who we are and what we do. So Promise is a nonprofit venture studio that supports innovators and accelerates innovations for equity in early childhood development. So our vision is to see a world where all children, no matter their background, can fulfill their innate promise. And we intend to make that vision a reality by supporting best-in-class innovators like yourselves. And so we prioritize supporting innovations that address these challenges for children and families facing the greatest adversities due to structural racism and other systemic inequities. So to delve deeper into how the fellowship program facilitates the support, I'm going to now pass over the baton to my colleague, Melissa Phil, who is a senior advisor as well as a coach on the Promising Ventures Fellowship. She will walk you all through the insights with some valuable opportunities of what the fellowship offers. Melissa, over to you.
Sweet. Thanks, Demetra. Through our Promising Ventures Fellowship Program, we offer a no-cost accelerator to select ventures that are ready to achieve growth and impact at scale. We understand the challenges of entrepreneurship, particularly in the early childhood sector. And in the fellowship, we provide comprehensive support to help organizations overcome barriers and make substantial progress towards their growth and impact goals. Our fellowship is all about meeting you exactly where you are on your journey. So when you apply, we encourage you to communicate your ambitious goals for boosting your venture's growth and impact throughout the program. Once you become a fellow, your entire experience will revolve around the goals that you've identified. We believe in personalized support. So while we have many different tools to share, there's minimal reliance on a standard structured curriculum. Instead, most of the programming in the fellowship is tailored specifically to your goals as an individual organization. Imagine a jigsaw puzzle. This is a very simple jigsaw puzzle. I'd like to do this puzzle once in a while, where each piece represents a key element of the fellowship experience. Let's explore these puzzle pieces to uncover how it all comes together. The four pieces are, first, it's the individual coaching and strategic advising that I talked about a little bit earlier. Second is a supportive peer community who are all doing work within the early childhood space, but in different specific areas. Third is leadership development. And fourth are targeted introductions plus connections to funders, customers, partners, etc. I would love to see in the chat which one of these four puzzle pieces resonates with you most and what your venture might need. So if y'all just want to take a second to put it in a chat, this is not a formal poll, so feel free to rate whatever you would like. Just super curious. Nice. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Adeline. Number one, individualized coaching. Well, you all are keeping me in my job, so that's good, because that's the part that I do. Awesome. Targeted introductions coaching. It looks like a range. Wonderful. Thanks. Thank you for your participation. We're going to go a bit deeper into the individualized coaching piece. This is where you'll be assigned to 2 fellowship coaches who will meet with you regularly to work on your specific goals. So the way this typically works is throughout the program, your coaching sessions are scheduled at the beginning. So you'll know exactly when your coaching sessions are and the cadence of those sections, and your coaches will chunk out those sessions to work on specific goals. Typically in between sessions, there might be what I call homework, but other coaches don't like to use that term, but there might be turnaround of something that you're working on. So for example, it could be your strategic plan, it could be your impact model, it could be your theory of change. There could be something sort of in writing that the coaches are working with you on in between sessions. But typically that's sort of how it works. And let me just show you so far who we have coaching for this year's fellowship. So these 7 amazing individuals, not counting me, I'm not calling myself amazing, are a subset of our larger team. Promise is comprised of mission-driven entrepreneurs with experience spanning early childhood education, social impact, curriculum assessment, technology, media, and consulting. We bring expertise across business planning, investment, team building, fundraising, sales, marketing, and communications, as well as customer experience and many more things. So across our entire team, we have a breadth of skills that we can all lead on. It's a diverse group of people with a diverse set of experiences. So if you join us in the fall, you'll be working with 2 or more folks on this screen, plus coaches tend to phone a friend throughout the fellowship if a specific need arises. So you're more than likely to meet multiple members of our entire expanded Promise team. In terms of our second piece, which is our facilitated community experience, we optimize that for peer-to-peer support and learning. This is always a highly valued piece of the fellowship. Our past fellows have given and received crucial support and advice to each other, and I'm sure Melanie and Michelle will be talking about that later. And many of our fellows have ended up partnering with each other. We provide ample time and communication vehicles to foster collaboration and cross-pollination. And I'm super psyched because this year, this is going to be my 3rd year coaching in the fellowship, but our first year having an in-person gathering. So we'll all get to meet one another in person in October. This will be an amazing opportunity to start connecting and collaborating in person. We'll share plenty of information in advance for those accepted into the fellowship. And of course, Promise will fund all travel and expenses for each team to attend. So that's pretty exciting. I think that's like my most exciting slide. So it might be going downhill from here. Sorry about that. So our third puzzle piece, leadership development, plays a big role in strengthening the community that you all will build. So we offer a lightweight, personalized program to nurture the leadership capacity of the entrepreneurs in the fellowship. So some of this leadership development is done through coaching, but another piece of our model are adaptive huddles, where each team will bring a complex adaptive problem to the cohort and learn through problem solving in community with one another. Through this offering, fellows meet in facilitated small groups to build this muscle, and we call this experience our adaptive leadership huddle. Sorry, I buried the lead there. So that is our third puzzle piece. And moving on to our last puzzle piece, it's all about connections. Recognizing that we don't have all the answers, we leverage our extensive network to introduce fellows to contacts who can help them achieve their goals. This year, we'll also be working with some partners to bring you engaging professional learning opportunities for you to learn and broaden the network of experts you have access to. I just spoke to a former fellow this morning who we introduced to a then customer and then became an investor and might actually become even a bigger part of the organization. So this is a really big piece of the work that we do to sort of power up your network. We will help you expand your network through a guaranteed spot in a future show and tell as well. So for those of you who don't know, that's where you'll be coached to create a 3-minute pitch video. We have an event that features all of our show and tell participants, but you also keep that video as an asset to use in all different aspects of fundraising, marketing, etc. This gives your venture exposure to a more national audience. Now that we've finished talking about all the aspects of the fellowship, let's talk about the big picture and a bit more of the logistics. If you are selected as a fellow, you'll participate in fellowship from October of this year through February of next year. And then you'll be coached to do your show and tell pitch. And that event will come after February of next year. This year, for example, we had it a few weeks ago in June. Oh no, was it July? It was June, sorry. Here's a general view into what you can expect for programming. So there will be several Zoom events for community support and shared learning to get you excited about the rest of your fellowship journey, in addition to obviously that in-person event that you will all attend in October. There will be 2 skill building workshops that we will tailor to the needs of our fellowship class. So in previous years, we've done workshops on theory of change. We've done workshops on the impact business model canvas. It kind of varies based on where folks are. You'll have 7-ish, maybe more, customized coaching sessions with your Promise coaches. And again, those are spread out throughout the program so that there's a cadence of there's time in between each session to push the work forward. There'll be 4 to 5 small group peer experiences. Those are those adaptive huddles that I talked about. And then some of the other things that we talked about in terms of connections and whatnot, those are all sort of come in organically. So we're going to talk a bit more about who should apply to the fellowship now that you kind of know what the fellowship is. And I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the chat. So if there's any questions, Vance, I just see you in here. Will you let me know if there's any questions that I'm not?
Yes, I'll let you know. I'm sorry.
Sweetness. Thank you. I think you're joking around in there. I saw something about bow ties. Okay. So who should apply for the fellowship? We are looking for social entrepreneurs who are working in the US early childhood space. So you can actually live anywhere in the world, but you have to have a focus in the US, meaning you are working in the US. That doesn't have to be your only area that you work in. We define early childhood as prenatal to age 5, including the adults who care for children and influence their environments. That can include parents, caregivers, educators, pediatricians, social workers, advocates, and more. We define social entrepreneurs as any individual who has identified a need or opportunity in our society and is working on a solution. We're specifically looking for entrepreneurs who have goals to reach children and families facing the greatest adversities stemming from systemic racism, poverty, and injustices based on gender, ability status, and other identities. We also look for organizations that have the potential, either immediately or in the future, to achieve social impact at scale. Which, you can define that as reaching a large number of children or families, or you can define that as saturating the market within your individual community. We work with folks from nonprofits, for-profits, academics, practitioners, essentially anyone working towards greater impact and scale in the world of early childhood. The common thread here is that there's a shared goal of scaled impact. We highly value diversity and welcome people of all backgrounds to apply. We strongly encourage applications from social entrepreneurs who identify as Black, Indigenous, people of color, women, LGBTQ individuals, and others from historically underrepresented communities, and in particular, those who have lived experience relevant to the need or problem they seek to address. Also, in alignment with our commitment to accelerating innovations for equity in early childhood, we are looking for ventures who center equity in their organizations and interventions. Have traction and are poised for sustainable growth and have strong participation potential. That basically means you have the time to participate in the fellowship because it's quite the commitment. It's worth it, but it's quite the commitment. Over the past 4 years, we've learned that the following types of ventures are best positioned to optimize their fellowship experience. The first are equity-driven ventures, and those that consistently prioritize equity in their interventions as organizations, encompassing how they manage and support their talent and their culture. They actively engage in meaningful communication with their communities. They challenge oppressive systems, and they strive for equitable outcomes for children and families. The second are ventures that have traction and are poised for sustainable growth with a solution that has a proven concept, which addresses a clear need for their clients, users, and our beneficiaries. They also demonstrate financial stability with positive cash flow and sufficient reserves. And essentially at an 8-month runway is what we'd be looking for a startup organization. Both of these qualities enable them to make substantial social impact at scale. And this one is a bit unique to this year's fellowship. We're going to be looking more towards organizations, again, that already have a product in the market. They don't have to have a large market, but we're not necessarily focused on pre-product organizations for the most part. Lastly, our experience has shown that ventures with at least 2 committed leaders, including the executive director, CEO, or other member of the executive leadership team, are well positioned to make significant strides in accelerating their impact. These ventures establish fellowship goals that closely align with their organization's strategic priorities and can dedicate the 2 to 6 hours per week to the program, ensuring a focused and impactful engagement. By identifying these attributes in ventures, we have observed that they tend to thrive. I'm still going, right, Demetra? Okay, let's talk a bit about program alumni to give you a sense of who we've supported in the fellowship in the past. This is such a fun, I love this slide because we love all these folks. Here is a look at the alumni from the first 4 years of the program. As you can see, over half of the fellowship organizations have been nonprofits, with an additional third or so being for-profit. Nearly half of our alumni identify as BIPOC, and nearly 8 in 10 identify as women. Alumni hail from across the country, and we've had representation from over 20 states. We hope you're super interested in applying by now. Let's go over some more of the logistics. And I'm going to turn it over to Demetra. Excellent job with the slides. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa, for kicking us off. All right, so to Melissa's point, we're going to get into logistics now. So let's start with the fellowship timeline. So the Promising Ventures Fellowship application is now open. So if you haven't done so already, we encourage you to review the application to get a better understanding of what we're hoping to learn about you, your team, your venture, and of course, your work. And so we appreciate your participation in today's workshop, as it provides an important opportunity to just explore fellowship fit and next steps. And so after today's workshop, our next couple of milestones include a Ask Me Anything session. We're going to have 2 of those, and those are intended to be interactive. In those sessions, we'll give you some deep insights on our selection process and answer any questions that you might have of what that might look like. From there, we will make sure that before this event ends, you have those registration links to attend those Ask Me Anythings. Again, those are interactive sessions where we really focus on fielding your questions. In addition to that, we have some small intimate group coffee chats that will be happening throughout July. That's where we'll have a small group setting where we can really talk deeply into your personalized application. And there's also links where you can sign up to those slots on our fellowship webpage. I also want to highlight that the application deadline is on August 11th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. So after that, our team here at Promise will spend several weeks carefully reviewing the applications before sending out final decisions around September 26th. And so as you review the application, you're going to notice that the application is comprised of about 3 types of questions. You will have general venture and team questions. Secondly, you'll have short essay questions and video questions. And then also, thirdly is the video questions. And each of these application components are designed to give our team a really clear picture and understanding of your venture's work. So let's break down each of these types of questions that you can expect to see. Again, the first set of questions are general venture and team information. These questions provide an opportunity for you to share details about your venture and the individuals involved. So we aim to learn the specific area of early childhood development that your venture focuses on. Additionally, we want to understand where your venture stands in its current stage of development. We also want to understand your legal structure and who your target clients or users are. In addition to that, we are interested in gaining a sense of your team composition, what it looks like as far as your head count. We also want to understand who from your team is actually interested in applying for the fellowship. And again, to Melissa's point, ideally, we are looking for teams of 2 that include either the CEO, executive director, or president, or that can be another member of your team's executive leadership team. However, I do want to highlight one thing. We recognize that organizational structures vary from venture to venture. And we understand that those roles or titles may not be specific to the decision makers in your organization, especially given your fellowship goals. And so with that being said, we welcome any executives from your leadership team who can contribute to advancing your organization's work through the fellowship. And so you'll have plenty of spaces throughout the application. There's one specifically that comes to mind where you can actually tell us why the team that you've identified in your fellowship application is best suited to drive your venture's work with the support of our coaches and the rest of the fellowship team. And so the next question type that you're going to see is the short essay question. So we're hoping this is going to provide a space for you to share insights on your thinking about your work and also how you communicate about your work and the community you support. Through these questions, we aim to understand how you define the need or the challenge that your venture is addressing. We also want to understand how your solution contributes to driving and fostering more equitable outcomes for children and families. We also seek to understand, again, your venture's financial standing and your plans for scaled impact and growth. And of course, we'd love to understand your intentions, plans, or record in terms of how you measure success for your solution. And lastly, we're keen to understand your organizational priorities or goals. We want to know how you would like to work with our coaches, what support you are seeking in accelerating your progress, and how we might be an aid in achieving that. So please provide insights into what areas you would like to focus on with our coaches to enhance or expedite those efforts. Again, don't shy away from being specific here about where you would love to have our support in creating more growth and impact for your organization. And again, with this application, in particular for the short essay questions, there's no specific word count. There's no specific word requirement either. So for these, we encourage you to be detailed yet concise with your responses. So I would say aim to provide answers with approximately 200 words per question. But again, that is not a hard rule. Feel free to take the time and space that you need to answer the question in a way that feels adequate. And then the last thing that I want to highlight here for you are the video questions. So there are going to be 2 video questions on the application, one about what makes your venture distinctive, and then the other is about why are you applying to the fellowship? So in this first video question, we would love to learn your understanding of the competitive landscape for where your solution operates. And then from there, we'd love to understand what sets your solution apart from all the alternative approaches that are in the market that are addressing the problem that you're also addressing. And then in that second video, we'd love for you to focus on why are you applying to the fellowship? What motivates you and your team at this stage in your journey as a venture to want to be a part of this experience and take advantage of the different supports? Now you have a preview of what's coming next, but again, we want that second video to be a great space for you to highlight why your team is applying, but in particular at this stage in your journey, why it makes sense for you to apply. And so the videos are intended to be casual. So no need for elaborate production here. We simply want you to turn on your laptop webcam or feel free to use your phone in selfie mode to speak directly to us. We prefer a very natural and authentic setting. So no need to create graphics, slides, or background music. Just keep the video simple, concise, and I would say aim for about 4 minutes or less when it comes to each of these videos. And again, it would be beneficial to have the videos filmed or featuring different members of your fellowship application team. So that allows you to provide a diverse perspective and for us to hear from different folks on the team of 2. And so again, the goal is to give us insights into who you are, what you do, and why this work is significant to you. So the last thing that I want to mention in regards to the application is you will have an opportunity to let us know if you are a current member of the Promise Venture Network. If you're not, we're going to invite you to join our community of over 400 early childhood ventures. Being a part of the Promise Venture Network brings numerous benefits, such as having your profile on our Early Childhood Venture Index, which is used by funders, customers, and others in the ecosystem to discover impactful organizations in the early childhood space. Additionally, you'll have the opportunity to connect with others, including ventures, supporters, and again, those other stakeholders in the field. We have a Slack community that you'll be invited to join if you become a member of the network. There, you'll be able to engage directly with other peers in the space. We have tailored resources that we share there in addition to programming. And so this last step here about, becoming a member of our network, if you already aren't, is actually the last piece that we want to cover for the application process. And we're actually super excited to get into something super fun. So I've covered a lot of ground on the fellowship application. Melissa has talking about and talked you all through what we're looking for in terms of applicants. And we hope by now you have somewhat of a closer look into what we're looking for as far as a great fit. But now you're going to hear from our alumni panel. So without further ado, let's dive into a discussion and discover the stories of folks who've actually sat where you are, considering and applying for the fellowship. So I would welcome you all, if you haven't, prepare questions that you might have for the alumni that we have featured here today, but also our coaches and our Promise team. And do not hesitate to drop those in the chat. We have folks here with us who will be monitoring. With that said, I am thrilled to introduce who we have here today. We have Ginger Young, Melanie Richardson, and Michelle Lopez here today, and they're going to share their experiences firsthand. I'm going to begin by asking each of these panelists to provide a brief overview of their organization and, of course, their fellowship experience. And then we'll give you some context before we move into questions. So feel free again to share your questions in the chat. We welcome you to address the panelists directly if there's someone you want to hear from as far as naming them. And then I'm going to have Melissa, feel free to help me co-MC and come off mute if there's a question that's relevant to what we're discussing at the time. And so with that being said, we just want to make sure you know this is a supportive space, safe space, and there's no such thing as a bad question. So we welcome everyone to engage and participate. To get us started, I am pleased to introduce Ginger Young. Ginger is the founder and CEO at Book Harvest. Ginger, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Demetra. I'm so glad to be here.
Awesome, thanks. Ginger, to get us started, I would love if you could just tell us a little bit more about Book Harvest, what you all do, and then if you could describe what you worked on during the fellowship, that would be a great start.
Sure, it's a pleasure to do so. I founded Book Harvest a dozen years ago with the simple idea that I wanted every child to grow up in a home that was rich with books. And along that first decade journey, I grew to realize in a way that was quite deep, way more than I had realized in the beginning, that literacy really does begin at birth in the home with parents and with books. And so we spent that first decade building out a portfolio of programs that were very, very focused on making sure every child had books and every parent had support. We reached a juncture about at the end of our first decade where we realized that we had a lot of answers on the ground in our flagship community, Durham, North Carolina, and we wanted to go further and deeper with those things we had learned in that first decade, but we didn't know how to do it. And so when I had been in the fellowship world or in the Promise Venture world for a long time, was in the index, was following the work and the things that were coming out of Promise Venture, and really believed in this idea of an accelerator that would help a group with a big idea think deeply and carefully about how they can push the gas pedal on something that is a jump up from what they've been doing all along. And that fit us perfectly. I was scared. I was intimidated by going beyond Durham. I knew that we had some really good answers and some demonstration of what we did, of how the work we did mattered to families. We heard it all the time because we were so parent-led. But it was a big step to figure out what to do next. So that's how we came to the fellowship application process.
That is awesome, Ginger. It's great to hear about that, you all's intentions around growing the impact you'd already seen in Durham. Well, I'm curious, I'm sure everybody wants to know, like, how did the fellowship turn out for Book Harvest? What progress did you make on your goals, if any at all? And did participating in the fellowship accelerate your progress towards those goals?
It absolutely did. Although I will tell you that it was 6 months that went at the pace of about a week or 2 weeks. It was so quick. And I think about the fellowship, and I was a little unusual because my team doing the fellowship was 3 people, not 2. My colleagues, the director of early literacy and the executive director of Book Harvest Durham, joined me in this journey. And we had kind of 3 phases of the fellowship, which I think were fairly typical. When I talked to other people who had been through it, it seemed like we'd had a similar trajectory, which is you start out full of verve and energy and clarity about what you're after. You go through a middle phase of incredible self-doubt and lots of big existential questions. And at some point toward the end of that second phase, what we found was back to clarity. We had a lot better sense of how to frame the big questions that were going to drive our strategy. We would never have asked those questions if it weren't for our coaching with our amazing coaches from the fellowship. And it took a lot of courageous conversations and self-reflection all through that 6 months, which, as I said, flew. I would not recommend this fellowship to anybody who doesn't want to get into uncomfortable spaces, because if you're trying to change the world, you have to be willing to go into those spaces. And this is a safe space to do that, if that makes sense. It's a gift beyond measure for anybody who's actually trying to make real and enduring changes in this world of early childhood, which in my mind, in our society, we have so dropped the ball for so many children on, and I want us all to do better by that. So,
awesome. Thank
yeah.
you, Ginger, for your honesty and transparency there. And the way you broke that down into the 3 different segments of your experience here with our 6-month fellowship. All right, I'm going to transition a bit. I want to welcome and introduce Melanie Richardson, co-founder and executive director of Training Grounds. Melanie, we really appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you very much. I am excited to be here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Okay, good. So
Awesome.
Training Grounds is based in New Orleans, although I am physically in Las Vegas right now. We are based in New Orleans, and we work with adults and caregivers who are responsible for caring for children birth to 5 and providing them with the support so that they can be the best version of themselves and increase their knowledge and understanding so that the children in their lives can thrive. We do that through our We Play Center, which is a physical location that is best described as a learning lab for parents and a developmental lab for children. where we have parenting educators on the floor modeling and supporting both parents and children in real time. It also creates a village where parents can come together and get support and feel supported along their parenting journey. And so we have been doing that since 2017.
So thank you, Melanie. I'm curious, what were you all hoping to gain when you initially thought of, coming into the fellowship?
So it was interesting for us how we came into the fellowship. We first learned about Promise Venture maybe in 2017, 2018, when it was an idea. It was kind of an idea. It was moving forward, but it hadn't become what we all know of it, where it is now. And so we had been kind of watching Promise Venture grow as we were growing, and considered applying early on, and really just put a pause on it because we didn't feel that we were ready for what Promise Venture was looking to do with organizations. And so it wasn't until 2022, I mean, almost 4 years later, really, that we decided that Training Grounds was at a point where we were ready. We had a model. We had been doing a really good job with our We Play centers. We had gotten interest from other cities, municipalities, organizations about replicating our We Play center in other parts, in other communities, and felt that we were now at a point to really start looking more closely at scale. Although that was our original thought when we started Training Grounds, is that we would have We Play centers in communities, we knew that we weren't ready the first time that we were introduced to Promise Venture back in 2018. And so we were hoping to really kind of get some guidance on, like, how do you do this scale thing, right? Like, we knew it was an idea, we knew people wanted it, but there were also some things we knew we had to really fine tune, right? So we needed to make certain that our logic model was very clear. We needed to make certain that all of the evidence-based support that we knew to be true could be that could be documented. So there were kind of a lot of different little things that we needed to establish before we really got to scale. And I think that's what we were looking for when we came into Promise Venture. And my group was two. It was my co-founder and I that actually participated in the program.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, Melanie. I have one more question for you before we move on. If you look back, what would you say were like the most valuable lessons or insights that you gained from your experience in the fellowship?
Yeah, I would say probably validation, right? So we had the opportunity to work, one of the partners at the time was the Harvard Center on the Developing Child, which we had referenced a lot of their information. We had tapped into just kind of their overall thought process on children, child development. But one of the things that really stood out for us was the principles to improve outcomes for children, right? And like we kind of knew what the guidelines were, but we were really, and it was also an aha moment for us as well, that we were actually touching on all three of the principles. And that was rare. Like, most organizations will do one or two of the three, and we were actually doing all three. So I think it provided that real validation for us that we had gotten it right when it was in reference to what it was going to really take to improve outcomes for families and children.
Awesome. Thank you, Melanie, for sharing. All right. So finally, I'm pleased to welcome Michelle Lopez, Executive Director at La Fuerza de Familias Latinas. Michelle, thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Excited to have you. Michelle, I'm hoping you can start off by just telling us a bit more about La Fuerza and describe the goals that you set coming into the fellowship.
Sure. So La Fuerza de Familias Latinas is a national program that is a program of literacy partners, an organization that's based in New York. But La Fuerza de Familias Latinas was a national initiative set out to support Power Up Spanish-speaking parents of young children. We create educational media with Univision, one of the largest Spanish language broadcasters. And we use this culturally relevant content to engage caregivers in their child's early development, literacy, science learning, by embedding this really great content inside of workshops where parents have a chance to think on their own, come up with ideas together, draw from their own wisdoms, and then take some action. And so this program is pretty turnkey, but it also, because we launched right before pandemic, we literally launched right before, maybe like the month before. And so we have sort of built a number of different ways to support partnering organizations, whether it's recruiting and ways of thinking about retention. And so we do provide some technical support and professional development to our partners. And when we applied for the fellowship, so we launched in 2020, and then in 2021, we were in the fellowship. We were in a pretty, in a space of rapid growth. And so we were excited about the opportunities, but we were kind of taking every opportunity that came in front of us, right? So one of the big things that we needed to do was really sort of, we wanted to go B2B. We wanted to scale our programs, just like everyone that's probably here on this call. But we needed to get the house in order, right? So we needed an organizational model and some internal processes that would allow us to scale. And then the other thing was our business model itself. So, at the moment we were like, seize all opportunities. That was kind of like our motto moving forward. And I wouldn't say that we're out of that space totally, right? But our pitch was a mess. We weren't sure exactly what we were selling, and we weren't sure maybe what the real pain points were of organizations, and they also didn't know at that time either. So for us, it was really, those were the high priority areas of why we were seeking the fellowship. And by the way, we didn't have our strategic plan set just yet. We had a sort of, a wishful strategic plan. And so there was a lot of uncertainty when we went into the program. So I say that to say that you also don't have to have everything 100% either. Just have a good plan, some consensus, and then willingness to get to work. Because there's a lot of work, but I will promise you the return on investment is huge. So it's worth it.
Love that. And Michelle, just piggybacking off that, right, on the return on investment. What were the takeaways for you all, given what you just shared you wanted to work on?
Well, kind of like what Melanie said, I think because we were sort of in this very stormy space, having some validation that we weren't just being audaciously optimistic, that we actually, had a solid model and that we were doing the right kind of work. So that was really helpful to get validation in that space. And then, there were two things that were happening at the moment. I was entering the fellowship with the CEO, and I was new to the organization. So it allowed us to have a space to build a relationship. It allowed us to see each other's thinking, and to really see the different ways in which we were committed to the work. I feel that helped us get better alignment on what we wanted, not just the results that we wanted for the venture and the big impact that we want, or whether it was to have a sustainable business model, but also what do we want for the organization? What do we want the life of team members to be like? So that helped us become better aligned. And then the other thing was the mentorship. I mean, long past the fellowship, I'm still reaching out to Melissa and to other folks that provided support to us to talk about anything from talking shop over organizational challenges to just prepping for a pitch that's really important. And we just need a kind of an expert eye, to ask us some hard questions. So for us, that was really it really helped us to sort of build our own, social capital, as leaders in the space. Oh, and one other thing I want to say. Also, I entered the organization coming in as a leader of color, leading other leaders of color. And so that was really important for me to have a space I really feel like Promise provides this amazing network of support that has a keen eye towards the needs of leaders of color.
I love that. I love your emphasis on leadership and all of the things that you took away. So thank you, Michelle. Thank you all for setting up this conversation with your intros and your experience in the fellowship. We're definitely going to leave some time for some audience questions, but I do want to go a little bit deeper here. And going back to you, Ginger, you know, when you think about your fellowship experience, were there any like surprising revelations that stood out to you, like big aha moments?
Oh, there were loads of them. If I try to think about the biggest couple, I think it was really, it's a little bit like what Michelle and Melanie both referenced. We have this dogged optimism about our work, but being able to take the space and time with coaches who were really supportive. So we didn't feel like we had to put on our best selves for them, to ask the really tough, big questions, to get, as one of you said, I think Michelle, you said this, to get the house in order, to really get that logic model secure, to talk amongst the three of us about whether our assumptions were the same. That ecosystem of support for the zone that I think many nonprofits, in my case, we are a nonprofit, can easily skip past because we don't quite know what to do with it. So we just keep powering forward. And in that case, if you do so, you don't really have the strong foundation you need for significant growth. We were able to put pause on all of the pressures. We were continuing to work hard, of course, all the time, but there was a space with the coaching sessions, with the peer group convenings, to really sort of rise above the fray and just say, have we got what we need to do this work? Because it's hard work, and we need to really equip ourselves with the best tools and the best clarity of understanding in our own hearts and minds. Because if we didn't have it figured out, we weren't going to be able to take it to others and see it accelerate and go further. So I think that aha of, this is a place where we can be our authentic selves, and that's the way we're going to get to success, was really what struck me, that going into it, I wasn't aware would be sort of a superpower we developed over those 6 months.
Awesome.
With a lot of help from our coaches and our peers.
I love this emphasis on alignment and how the fellowship created space for that. Melanie, I want to ask the same question of you, if there was an aha moment or a big surprise revelation during your fellowship experience.
I think for me, the biggest was just how willing the cohort members were to share their resources and information. For me, so often in the world of nonprofits, it's like this competitive nature, like we're competing against each other for resources, for funding, for where we fit in the, in the early childhood landscape. And I really felt when we came to Promise and the way that, the peer groups and how we were able to help each other, that people were genuinely concerned about how you were doing as an organization, that it wasn't just about them and what they could get out of it. And I think that we had been through a couple of fellowships, but I just felt that this one really gave a sense of community, and genuinely concerned about the leaders and not just the venture. And I appreciated that. So that was a really big thing for us as a takeaway. And then I think also how available the coaches were. Like we really connected with our coach, and we continue to communicate with our coach. And, Vance is our guy, he came to visit us when he came to New Orleans. Like there was just this genuine relationship and genuine concern about the well-being of people. And I thought that for me was a really big aha. I know it wasn't, necessarily with our venture and what we figured out, but yeah, that was surprising and very a pleasant surprise.
Huge shout out to Vance, one of our rockstar coaches as well. Thank you, Melanie. Michelle, I want to segue a little bit here because you started talking about leadership, and I wanted to ask a little bit more of a deeper question in terms of like, did the fellowship impact your leadership skills or abilities, or just the way that you approach influencing people or your organization in terms of driving change, whether it be in your organization or just in early childhood more broadly?
Absolutely. I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways was understanding the difference between a technical challenge and an adaptive challenge. And, you know, prior to this, as somebody who's been a practitioner in an early childhood space, like you feel like you want to take care of everybody and everything and solve every problem, but understanding that some of the problems are not ones that you yourself can solve as a leader, that actually the solving of that challenge is within either the space, the work, or the relationships of other team members, and then being able to have the confidence to sort of throw those issues to the team and then allow them to come back with some solutions, like understanding that those adaptive problems may have like more of a human element as opposed to the technical challenges, and that helps me to kind of, when I have a problem that comes to me, I know which ones are going to take a little bit more, massaging, and which ones just really require a couple of referrals. And the great thing is that, we could get those referrals because it's such an amazing group of people. We could just sort of like ask a question and get immediately 3 great CRMs that everybody loves, and so that was like something that I didn't have to go in and play with every sandbox. No, like somebody can help me with that, but the adaptive problems take a little bit more time, and then having the coaching for that. So that's what really made the difference. And I feel much more confident asking for bigger amounts of money too.
Oh, I love that. Making a big ask. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to pause here and just name everyone. If you have questions, now is the time. If you haven't, to drop those in the chat. Melissa, is there anything here while we pause to see if there's anything that has come through the chat that I may have missed that would be good to surface?
We do not have any questions in the chat.
Awesome. So if there are any, please keep them coming. But while we're looking for that, I wanted to go back to Melanie on this question around leadership. Melanie, I'm curious, did the fellowship have any impact on your leadership skills or abilities, or just the way that you approach leading in your organization or in the early childhood ecosystem more broadly?
No, it was funny when Michelle was talking about the technical and adaptive challenge. It just kind of brought that right back to the forefront. Like, I am so much the technical person and kind of fixing things right there, that was one of the biggest things. And so I think bringing that back to our organization and introducing our staff to it and giving them some autonomy to really address those challenges that they can address, and not feeling like we have to fix it, but that we can give them, and then allowing us the ability to focus more on some of the larger, bigger issues that we need to address. So I think that was one. I think the other thing that it did for us, because it was such a collaborative environment, I've always been that kind of person where I've, collaborated with other organizations and realized that we can't do this by ourselves. And so I think it just strengthened my desire to continue to have that collaborative leadership approach to working with the community, whether it be with our families or with our other partners, and just be more intentional in that way. So I think that both ways, it kind of helped just solidify, yes, collaborative leadership is the way to go. Collaborative working with others is the best way, but then also giving people within our organization the autonomy to be able to fix their own technical issues, and recognizing the difference between technical and adaptive challenges.
And I see we have one question. It's around, does having a one-person team put you at a disadvantage? I know everyone on this panel participated either in a pair, and in Ginger, I think a unique case, a trio. Can you speak to any advantages or disadvantages you saw around team size? And then Promise, we're happy to share our insights based on our experience as well, if anyone has any thoughts on that.
I would just say that my team and I got a lot out of having the experience together and working collaboratively through the process. If somebody did it by themselves, I'm not sure it wouldn't be okay, but I would encourage whoever is considering doing it solo to think about who is another person they could bring on this experience to be really figuring it out with them, because it's hard, lonely work no matter what. The coaches are incredible cheerleaders and voices of wisdom and experience, but having somebody else inside, even if it's a board member or another director level staff person, whatever it is, will just make it a less lonely experience, I think, and increase the ability to have those takeaways and that sharper strategic direction.
And Melissa, I would love if you have any.
I mean, so I coached a single founder in this past fellowship, and she, she benefited from the fellowship, of course. I think what's challenging is that, going back to that word acceleration, we're really trying to pose questions and have a discussion during coaching sessions that then can push the work forward significantly in between coaching sessions. And so when you're a sole participant, and in some cases, like, you don't have that number two, right? And because you're a smaller organization and you're still in that growing phase, you don't necessarily get the leverage in between sessions or get the throughput in between sessions as you would get if you're a bigger organization that has that number two and number three person. So that's kind of, but that it wouldn't disqualify you from applying. We're happy to talk to you sort of one-on-one before you fill out the application, just to make sure. Obviously, we're all entrepreneurs, and the last thing we want to do is have folks spend time on the application if it's not a fit. So we're happy to talk to you in advance. It just makes it a bit more challenging to get through the work in between sessions. I think Crystal, Dimitri, do you want to answer Crystal's question about the 2 to 6 hour time commitment?
Yeah, we have a program calendar, Crystal, that I can share out after today's session. But the 2 to 6 hours, 2 on the low end, typically you're going to have a coaching session every other week, and that can be anywhere from 60 minutes to 90 minutes long. So that's the most time you'll spend in a synchronous section with your coaches. The rest of the time is really the work that Melissa called homework in between, and it can vary depending on what you're working towards. And then we do have some group activities that happen throughout the fellowship experience. So on the low end, the investment may be 2 hours, and I think on a heavy week you can see 6 hours, but it definitely fluctuates, and most of the work is really asynchronous and not in those live sessions.
Yeah. So for example, one team last year in between sessions, they did interviews of, I think, 4 folks in the country to try to document their perspective on value proposition, for example. So that was like, they scheduled that on their own time, but still that was a significant amount of time. So 4 interviews and then codifying what they learned from those interviews. So it kind of just depends on what the coaching is, but it's not nothing in between each session, at least not if I'm coaching you.
We try to make it tie it into the goals, right? Everything it feeds back into what you're working on, to Melissa's point. Great question so far, and definitely encourage folks to keep them coming. I would love to just ask this group, hey, if you were talking to a friend, they're interested in applying for the fellowship, what advice or any insights would you offer them to help them determine if now is the right, choice for them to be a part of an experience like this? And anyone feel free to kick that off, Ginger, Melanie, or Michelle.
I think I would share, and actually I just texted a colleague of mine to say, have you ever considered the Promise Venture? Right, I see where she is in her organization. I think just like what we looked at was really focusing our energy on, like, are we ready yet? Like, just because it's an opportunity doesn't mean it's the right opportunity at the right time. We had known about Promise Venture for a long time, and was just really patient until we were at a point where, one, we felt that we were ready to scale, that we were really ready to, we had, had a product, we, had proven that it worked, we had the data that showed it, we had gotten information. So I would just say, really not just looking at it as an opportunity, because if it's a good opportunity and the time isn't right, then you're not going to get out of it what you need to get out of it. There's a lot of time, a lot of commitment. And if you are still trying to start it, it's going to take away from your ability to really start it and then move forward. So I would just say, just realizing that just because this is the application process that's open now, the application process will be open next year as well, when you might be better suited for it. And we waited 4 years. Like I said, we didn't do it the first time it was presented to us. So I would tell them, anybody that I was talking to, I would say, just really examine, are you ready to scale? Do you have the infrastructure in place, the team in place to be able to take all the work you're doing now and then actually implement it shortly after. And I would also say, you know, for us, when we did the pitch, we immediately had people contacting us, and we had to be ready to go right then and there, right? You know, they came saying, we're ready to support you with replication. And they were ready to move at that moment. And so I would just say, you know, that there's a lot of different benefits from it, but just make certain that you're ready for it. You're ready for the growth, the opportunities that are going to come, and that you have the infrastructure in place.
Any final thoughts on that question in terms of what Melanie has shared, which I think is just wise advice? Oh, thank you, Michelle, for sharing in the chat. Awesome. Everyone, I believe we're at time. And of course, again, we opened up this session with sharing that we wanted to be conscious of your time. And so one of the things that I'd love to share with you all is that we do have an opportunity for you to continue to get these types of questions answered. I dropped in the chat a link to our next session, which is going to be an Ask Me Anything, which is really where we'll have more time to answer these types of questions and go even deeper into the selection process and your application. And then, of course, we want to thank you for being here today, and we're asking for your feedback. So the next link that I'm going to share with you is an opportunity for you to take a brief survey and just let us know how your experience was here today. Again, I do want to say I'm going to drop my email in the chat, and we want you to not hesitate to reach out to us with any questions. And we'll also share a link so how you can spend some time with us directly one-on-one to answer some of these questions as well. So thank you all for joining us, and we appreciate you.